A video of the fierce indignation of Russian occupiers who are driving through the territory of the Syrian Arab Republic and complaining that the citizens of this country did not want to die for the recently overthrown dictator Bashar al-Assad has appeared on the internet, reports the TG channel Ukraine 365. In turn, Israeli military observer Yigal Levin, who also posts vivid footage of the exodus of former Assad fighters to neighboring Iraq on his channel, notes that this picture was entirely expected since most people do not want to fight at all and the discipline of almost any army is based on very severe punishments. The rapidly relocating Russians in Syria are documenting Syrian army soldiers who have taken off their uniforms, thrown down their weapons and are simply walking into Iraq, he writes. In addition, Levin emphasizes that the harsh discipline in the Syrian army was maintained by Russian Wagner mercenaries as well as militants from the Lebanese terrorist organization Hezbollah, and they carried out all this through repression, including threats and pressure on the relatives of Syrian army soldiers. As soon as these two factors were gone, the average Syrian Sunni soldier, simply not understanding why he should die in this war, left, either home or to Iraq, or even to the rebels, the Israeli military blogger states. By the way, in the viral footage, one can clearly see and hear how Russians speak with hatred about the Syrians who laid down their arms, uttering obscene insults towards them. It is worth noting that the crowd of Syrian citizens stretching into the direction of neighboring Iraq looks quite long. The fuckers are running, and we have to suffer for them. Russians driving along the road in their cars are indignant. The collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria is a disaster for Russia and its dictator Putin. Moscow has yet to feel the consequences of this event. The famous American historian and writer Timothy Snyder told, "The loss of Syria is not only a crushing blow to Putin's image as a geopolitician. He faces 4 very unpleasant consequences. The first consequence is the debunking of the myth that Russia allegedly never loses. Kremlin authorities and propagandists love to repeat this phrase in the context of the protracted war against Ukraine. History in Syria has shown that it is a lie. That is, Moscow's negotiating positions have been undermined. The second consequence is the difficulty of maintaining colonial rule in Africa. It will become much more difficult and much more costly for Russia to maintain influence in this region after losing the logistical hub, the Syrian military bases. The third consequence is the Turkish gas pipeline. The project to build it was blocked by Assad, indulging Moscow. Now it can be built, which will put an end to Russia as an energy power. The fourth consequence is the failure of the doctrine of supporting dictators. History in Syria has shown that the Kremlin's policy of keeping loyal usurpers in power at bayonets cannot be long-lasting. The collapse of such regimes occurs with lightning speed.
Residents of the area around Kamishli Airport in northeast Syria reported hearing violent explosions overnight after an airstrike hit trucks loaded with ammunitions and rockets that were heading to a military base in Tartab. "We don't know the story. It was just in the morning when we realized they were trucks loaded with ammunition, leftovers from the former army, the regime," said Ibrahim al-Falaj, who lives near the base. He said residents assumed that the strikes were Israeli. Israel carried out a wave of heavy airstrikes across Syria targeting military infrastructure after a shock offensive by Syrian insurgents toppled the government of Bashar Assad. However, Turkish security officials said Tuesday that the strike in Kamishli was carried out by Turkey, targeting weapons and ammunition that were abandoned by the Syrian army and seized by Syrian Kurdish militants. The explosions lasted for over 20 minutes after the strike, and many houses in the surrounding area were damaged as a result, residents of the area said. "We just felt a hit taking place. It hit the first one truck and we saw the other trucks retreating. And from there, rockets and shells started to follow," said Hamid al-Assad, an eyewitness from Qub al-Ziki village in Kamishli. He said residents of the area as shells began to fall around their houses. "We were sitting when these explosions started to hit the house," said Mahmoud al-Hamza of Tartab. "The explosions were hitting randomly, and we didn't know where they were coming from. Once we got out of our house, this rocket hit the house. There were no details released by the local Kurdish administration regarding the explosions, but members of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces blocked the road to the base.
البارح المساء الساعة بالتسعة هيك 8:30 ما سمعنا غير صوت انفجارات.
مش خيام عارف مالي خوف سنية ارتفاع كيف
ما نحس الا ضربت اول وحده يشوف السياره رجعت لي ورا.
كان الضربه بدجاج عربي مكيف غساله اغراض البيت مونه يعني ما في مازوت بنزين للبابور قال ما بي بس
بس
والله احنا الساعة بالتسعة بالعشرة قاعدين بالبيت ما حسينا الا هالانفجار صارت.
The fate of Russian military bases in Syria, including the key ports of Tartus, has been effectively sealed. According to Landsat satellite images published by OSINT analyst M.T. Anderson, Russian warships have retreated 8 kilometers from the shore. Russian ships left port. The images, taken on December the 8th and 9th, confirm that all Russian ships are at anchor in the Mediterranean. Dara Masikot, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, believes that the ships are leaving to ensure their safety amid the growing threat from Syrian rebels. Russian military expert Vasily Dandikin had previously said that the naval squadron had gone to the open sea due to an unpredictable situation in the region. The images published by M.T. Anderson were the first documentary confirmation of this information. The withdrawal of Russian ships from the Tartus underscores the precariousness of Russia's position in Syria. The fate of bases, including the Khmeimim air base, remains in question. Rebels, whom Russia has been fighting for nearly a decade, now occupy key positions in the region and could launch attacks on military installations. Of particular concern are the risks of the rebels capturing Russian equipment, including Su-34 and Su-35 fighters and bombers. If the bases are not evacuated in a timely manner, the military equipment may fall into the hands of the new authorities, which will be a significant blow to the prestige and capabilities of the Russian military-industrial complex. Tartus, as Russia's most important base in the Mediterranean, was key to maintaining operations in the Middle East. However, the current situation shows that Russia is losing control over the region, raising doubts about its ability to maintain its influence beyond the former Soviet Union. The decision on the fate of the bases in Syria will be decisive for Russia's further foreign policy strategy, but it is already obvious that its position in the region has weakened. Earlier, media reported that the bases in Tartus and Khmeimim will be withdrawn. Z channels confirmed the flight of the Russian Federation from Syria. It became known that the armed opposition had entered Tartus. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Syria under Assad, Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali, stated that the issue of the presence of Russian bases in Syria would be decided by the new authorities. In addition, information has appeared in the media that Russia plans to secretly transport weapons from Syria on civilian ships, since passage through the Bosphorus is closed to its military ships.